All right. Thank you very much for joining me today, David.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I guess just to get right into it, we're all curious about what kind of brought you to recruitment in the first place.
I think I'm like most serial recruiters. I fell into it. Um, I mean, my background had been in HR for 10 years. I was doing labor relations and employee development with the U.S. government in Denver, and was married to a lovely Japanese woman, had a couple of kids, and knew nothing about Japan. And decided to take a leap and come over to Japan and taught English for a year. And so my undergrad, I'd finished up my doctorate this time, and my undergrad was in teaching. So coming over and teaching was kind of a dream come true. Um, but it didn't really pay that much, so I needed to get back into HR and fell into recruitment. I got called up by a guy in San Francisco. They were doing tech recruitment. It was a one man band. I was working alone in a Kamiacho apartment and doing recruitment for Goldman Sachs and Credit Suisse in IT, and didn't have a clue about IT. Didn't have a clue about recruitment because it wasn't HR. I was given in training like a stack of resumes and said, "Go, be free." And so that was my first 6 months of recruitment, and I did all right, but I wanted to learn more, and so moved over to a company called Wall Street Associates. They needed a manager for their back office team. And if I went over as a manager, they were going to allow me to work with the owner and get trained under him. And then I was going to manage their back office team. And I thought, wow, that's great. And they didn't really know that I didn't know anything. They thought I knew much more than I did. And so that was kind of, I fell into recruitment that way and learned a lot at Wall Street, which became N World,
Mm,
and was a director there. And we grew the company. When I started, it was when they just started up in Japan. So we had about 6 people in the office. When I left and went back to the US for a stint, we about 60 people. And then in the US, I set up a company teaching recruitment.
mm.
So I taught recruiters and salespeople in the US and in Asia. And ended up after Lehman shock, no one wanted training. And so I started back into recruitment. And since most of my network was in Japan and I was not happy being back in America, we decided to come back to Japan. And that gave me an opportunity to set up FocusCore. So that's kind of the tail, the short tail of how I got to where I'm at now.
Beautiful. So it's kind of similar to maybe many of us, myself included, coming over as an English teacher and kind of falling into recruitment. I'm curious, as you were building this out, I mean, you were part of some huge transitions, right? Going from Wall Street Associates to N World, etc. And you kind of made it from the bottom to the top in many ways. Do you remember, I guess, looking back as a young recruiter, something that was a real challenge for you, or a time when you felt like you're not sure if this is for you, but you pushed through some kind of obstacle?
Yeah, I do. I remember walking down the street thinking this is never going to happen. The boss I had was a gentleman named Nick Johnson, who's a legend in Japan and now a good friend. At the time, he was a tough boss. He would usually take in a new recruit and tuck them under his wing, so to speak. And it was tough. He would just like, you come back to the office after meeting and you had to have all the questions answered for the candidates. And he's like, "Well, did you ask about the other interviews the candidates have asking?" "No, I didn't. I forgot." "Well, why'd you forget?" I don't know." And so the next time out, go and, definitely remember that. And then come back and it's like, okay, did you find out the person's boss's name? No, I didn't. And it was just push after push after push. Um, and after about 3 months of a real kind of boot camp, really, really knew what I was doing. And it wasn't fun, but boy, it was great learning. Great learning. And I recommend it to everybody. But, we had KPIs that were pretty stringent, and we were expected to go way over that. Because if
Mm.
you're new, you're competing with people that are hitting KPIs, and you're thinking, okay, you got 6 months to get up to speed, or you're gonna get sacked, right?
So it was a very old school style when you joined, it sounds like.
Yeah, but it wasn't quote unquote. There are some other older school firms out in the world. It wasn't a. We had pockets when we were KPI centric,
Hmm.
but we were always very professional. We wanted to be, we were the underdog, and we always wanted to be better than everybody else. And we did a lot around educating and learning and
Mm.
health and wellness before it was even fashionable, because we thought, wow, that's how I got into running. We thought
Hmm.
healthy salespeople are better salespeople. So, we all got healthy, and then we started doing things called teachbacks, so that we were learning all the time, and we'd read a book and then come back and teach it to everybody else, so that we were always learning stuff. And
Wow.
we knew that if we wanted to grow and be the best that we could be in Japan, that we had to learn and to always be pushing ourselves.
Wow. So in many ways, it sounds like you were ahead of the curve, even for where many recruitment firms are right now in Tokyo.
I think so. It was great learning, and it was very organic and creative. We put in the best training program. I got to use my employee development skills, and brought we created the best training for any new hire that ever had. I mean, they would go through a 6 month modular program, and the first 2 weeks were classroom. And it's so different than a lot of firms that you have now.
Mm.
So yeah, I think we were ahead of the game, and we were always trying to do something new and different and stay ahead. And we had a great leadership team and great people that just always wanted to improve, and that was important for us.
This is it's kind of leading into maybe what you're doing now. I'm curious what you've taken from that experience and from your experience also, I guess, having training and seeing the creative ways and the best practices, etc. And then building that maybe into your current company, into FocusCore. I guess how much do you think that has informed you, and is there any ways that it's showing up right now in the company or the culture?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, from our inception, it was after a month after 3/11,
Mm.
and I'd learned from 9/11 that there was the at that time the financial services market was broken, so we knew it was tough, and so we just went and put in good processes. So when I set up in 4/11, the month after 3/11, it was a time. It was like, okay, I know that we can recruit through this, but it's going to be a down market, so it's a good time to put in really good processes, even though we're a small company. So I really looked to put in those processes, to put in training, and then after, we're on our 14th year. After about 9 years, 8 years, we decided to move away from contingency search and into a retained methodology. And the reason we wanted to do that is, again, to be able to really help our clients have the best experience. A lot
Mm.
of what we used to do at Wall Street was about experience. And what was the experience that the client is having? Not about what we're doing, but what's the experience? And it is a good experience. I always, when I train recruiters and salespeople, I talk about experience, and you think about Disneyland and Universal Studios. and you go to Disney and you got to have this magical experience, and it's kind of like your childhood, and it's a small
Yeah.
world after all, and you're remembering all the movies, and it's kind of magical experience. You go to Universal and you got like Marvel and the Spider-Man ride and the Hulk ride, and it's fast, and it's now both are amusement parks. Both cost about the same thing, but they're giving different experiences. And it's not whether one's right or not, it's about what are you choosing to give as an experience. And so one of the things we wanted to do was not kind of be the hit and run contingency search firm. We wanted everybody to partner with us, and we wanted to partner with them. And so we just changed our business model. It's been a wonderful experience for us and our evolution as a company.
How does it change how you can service or I guess give that experience to the clients?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things that I notice is that I stopped going in and pushing resumes. So
Mm,
I don't mind. I want to go in and I want to have a commercial conversation with the client and find out what are their challenges, what are they having troubles with, and then how can we best service them. Now, part of it might be, yeah, this is a simple, easy accounting job. You need a contingency search. Go and work with company ABC. They're respectable. They can do this for you at a great price. Do it this way. Or this job should be on a job board. You don't need a recruiter. Or this is a really tough CFO search. You need a retained search firm for this, whether it's me or any other firm. This is the solution you need. And it's
mm,
nice to be able to go in and offer those solutions instead of just saying, here's the three best resumes I have, and if you don't want to buy them, I'm going to the next company. And that's how a lot
mm.
of recruiters kind of work.
It kind of reminds me if your only tool is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail.
Exactly. Yeah,
So this
that's
gives
exactly
you,
right.
I guess, another tool to be really advising. And I guess now I do want to shift a little bit back into yourself personally. You had mentioned that you got into running because of this wellness culture that existed in your prior company. But what exactly was that reason that you got into it? How did you? Because you're now a marathon runner,
Yep.
correct? And
To yeah, I was a big fat guy. I came over to Japan, typical
I can't
American, and
believe that.
my mother-in-law's cooking was good, and my father-in-law liked beer, and so beer and big meals at dinner time helped me bulk
Wow.
up. Um, yeah, when I came over, I with the students, I needed to do something, and so one of the things was I could do outside of the classroom was, I guess, do a run because our school in Saitama had the boys did a half marathon and the girls did a 16K. And I remember going to the teachers going, well, I'll do the half marathon with the boys. And the teachers looked at me and said, yeah, probably not. Maybe 16K. You could try that. I said, no, no, no. And they won. I did do the 16K. And I remember walking back to the train. I could barely walk. I could barely stand up. I remember holding on to the train, just barely standing up. I had huge blisters on my feet. I remember
Oh,
getting into the bathtub, just screaming, going, "Ah," and I loved it. I loved, I loved it. That it was a persistence thing. That if I could run and persist consistently, more than I could be a good athlete. It wasn't about hand-eye coordination. It wasn't about team play. It was about me and my physicality and my mind and how I
mm,
could overcome that. And that was a huge growing point in my world. And I had our managing director, Simon Jelfs, I was working with him and he helped me learn what to do and walk me through a 5K, 10K. And then pretty soon I was running, 6, 7 marathons a year. And recently, pre-COVID, I ran 7 marathons in 7 days. Ran from
no way.
Fukushima to raise money for orphans in Japan, and it was absolutely brilliant. And yeah, so still running and loving it.
So you're the David Goggins of recruitment in Tokyo.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'm not that mental. No, David Goggins is
I mean, 7 marathons in 7 days. How were the blisters after that one?
I had no blisters, so I had good
Wow.
shoes, and yeah, better
Mm.
shoes, and
But you
and
have
my
the
my feet are just like leather now. They're ugly feet.
that's the trade-off, I guess.
Yeah,
Wow,
and
but that's so impressive. And I'm just curious, like again at the start, when you had run that 16K, did you do any running at all before that? Like even a 5K or
yeah,
any
probably.
training?
I remember doing a little bit of like running with the gym class, and we ran around the field. And I
Hmm.
went out the first time I ran 15 minutes. I ran by time, and I did 5 minutes running, 5 minutes walking, 5 minutes running, and I came home and I was white as a sheet. I fell on the floor, and my wife said, "Are you going to continue doing this?" I said, "Yes." And yeah, it just took time, but it's like anything. I found out that if I ran, I was better off running 15 minutes 5 days a week than 1 hour on Saturday, right?
Mm,
It was better to do, running 4 days and do it really well than, one day and then leaving it for the other six. And I could do that mentally. It's like, okay, I can do that.
incredible. How old were you when you started for that
I was
16K?
28, 29.
Okay.
So yeah, I never did sport really growing up. I hated sports. I hated team sports. Yeah, I just didn't play much. Hand-eye coordination wasn't my thing. Uh,
Mm,
and then I fell into that, and it was life-changing. It really was. I ended up then falling into karate, got my black belt in karate.
really?
Uh, yeah, I mean, it was such a, after you do a marathon, you feel like, wow, that's a great accomplishment. I could push my body in a way that I didn't know how, and my mind in a way I didn't know how, and it's made lots of things in the world a lot easier. And just being patient and kind to myself, and knowing, okay, if I miss a day running, I'll make it up. I'll do it tomorrow. I can't do, you know, double the run tomorrow. I just have to keep on going. And so that self-forgiveness, that self-talk was very helpful. Um, yeah, it's just, it was life-changing.
That's beautiful. It's so cool to see someone, I guess, almost 30 years old, finding this totally new hobby that transforms their life and then being able to see you still continuing to do that and pushing it way beyond what seems possible, I guess.
Now I'm in my 50s and I started taking up music, and I'm finding that is a whole nother kind of world that I never knew that I could really fall into. And that's beautiful too. So yeah, I think,
Mm,
always learning and challenging one's mind is important. I mean, that's, going back to recruitment, part of the reason we moved into retain, just to learn something new and be better. Yeah. We only get
mm.
one life, so you might as well do it kind of well.
Did you, yeah, definitely. And enjoy it. Did you change your recruitment style at all after you started running, or did you notice that there was any effects after you had kind of pushed yourself mentally from doing these marathons? Or
Yeah, I think there was a lot more around. You sent over some questions ahead of time, and there's some running things around that. But I think that the consistency part was really important. After Lehman shock, it was the worst time ever in recruitment, hands down. It was just a horrible time to be a recruiter. And I ran more than I ever ran in my life. I was running, I ran, over 120, 130 kilometers a week. I'd run 2 times a day, and that was just partly to stay sane. So did it change my recruitment style? Partly just to go out and think. Yeah, probably.
hmm. So it's kind of something that you can use as a stress management tool.
Yep,
Interesting.
definitely.
Have you gotten anyone else in the company involved in this kind of thing, or
Yeah,
do they
we
all
got
just think you're crazy?
we now have no, because we started. We do every year we do wellness things in our company, and
Mm,
right now we have a great group of people that are really into staying healthy and mentally and physically. And now we do we call dash and dine, and basically we run somewhere and have dinner. So
Mm.
that might be a 12, 15K run, and
Wow.
then we end up somewhere. And I think next month we're going to end up somewhere and have some Chinese food is where we're off to. So yeah, we've gotten everybody into running. I mean, Simon got me into running now. We continue doing that.
Excellent. Nice. I'm
So yeah, I
curious.
recommend you out running. You can come and join us and do a run.
Yeah, I really have never enjoyed running that much, I have to say. I do prefer like a sport, and like even if it's going to be running around playing soccer, just like sprinting around, for some reason there's some objective that takes my mind off of the pure torture that is running. But I
Yeah.
can understand. I did go for a couple of runs on my travels because I was in London and there wasn't much to do physically. Couldn't join a gym, and actually I do understand a bit better that kind of runner's high, or that
Mm.
feeling that you get. But I'm not as masochistic as yourself, I guess.
It's a great way
Yet.
to see a city. It's sightseeing is gorgeous, right? Be able to go out
Mm,
and run and see the city. That's fun. I do. I run sometimes with music, sometimes with books. I do a lot of reading because I got Audible and I can listen to books at speed and a half, so I can get through
mm,
50 to 60 books in a year. When you go out on a
wow.
20, 30K run, you can get through a lot of. But
Wow.
there's a lot of runs where just nothing, and it's really peaceful and kind of
Mm,
zen to go out and be with one's thoughts. People ask, well, what do you think about? I'm like, nothing. Or I think this morning I did speed work, so I was thinking a lot about pacing. But it's a lot like if you're playing soccer, right? You wouldn't wear headphones because you're thinking about, where you're going, and it's the same with running. When you get to a certain point where it's not just excruciating pain. Swimming is the same way for me. I find swimming very challenging. I
mm.
I call it floundering from death. It's
That's from being from Denver, maybe
right.
very
There's
landlocked.
no water.
My dad is actually from Denver. My grandpa,
Really?
I mean, grew up there. Yeah, in Cherry Creek. I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
That's awesome. So you spent a lot of time in Denver.
I've been a couple of times. Yeah, and my grandpa still lives there, so I do
Really?
go back there quite often. My brother lives in Rhino these days, actually. So
Got it. That's
yeah.
brilliant. Yeah, I went back. I hadn't been back in 20 years. Went back this year for the first time. Um, and still beautiful country. It's gorgeous
Mm,
place in the world. The mountains are. It was so green. I was just surprised at how green it was. My parents had moved from there, and so we hadn't gone back. But when they moved from Denver, and my parents' jobs took them out to the plains, the Great Plains. And after living in Tokyo so long and going to Colorado and seeing that big open sky, it was absolutely brilliant. It was tumbleweeds and blue and sunflowers. Growing up, it's just like, oh geez, it's the Great Plains. It's ugly, brown, but changes your perspective after living in this concrete jungle, right?
for sure. And it seems like a good place to train running too because of the altitude. I guess you condition yourself in a totally different way, probably.
Well, I didn't run in Denver, right? Well, growing
Hmm.
up, I wasn't a runner, so I had oxygen when I was there, living there. Now I went back when I ran. It's like there's no oxygen.
You've
But
deacclimated.
but yeah, that's where a lot of the Japanese Olympians they live in Boulder, right?
So I guess one more maybe topic because you had mentioned music as well, and you were in Denver in this landlocked place, very far from Hawaii, but somehow we share this in common that you play the ukulele,
Yeah.
although I'm not classically trained in the ukulele like yourself. But what is the story behind that in terms of picking it up for the first time and what you're doing with it these days?
Yeah. I mean, I goofed around with playing music as a kid. I mean, I played trumpet and I played cello for a bit and then moved to Japan, and cellos are very large to try and get here, and I wasn't good enough to lug it. And during COVID, found a what's called a populele. I don't know if you've ever heard the brand populele in Loft in Tokyo. And it was one of the times we could get out, I guess. And basically, it
Mm.
has an electronic light board. And so it lights up with an app and shows you where to play different notes. Okay,
Oh,
you lights up, there's a C. It lights up how to finger a G. Um, It's like, oh wow, and you put that together with a few YouTube videos and you get pretty good in a couple of months. Especially ukulele is a very forgiving, lovely little charming instrument that allows um, people to get good and sing with it quite easily. I think the Canadian school system uses it to teach music, which is wonderful to use a fretted instrument. And
Mm,
yeah, as soon as I picked it up, I just fell in love with it. Played it every day. Still play it every day since I've taken it up. So it's been what going on 4 years, 5 years now. Um, and yeah, went out and got a good ukulele, and then I started learning music lessons. I found a great teacher named Christopher Davis Shannon, who on my podcast, the intro music, he actually is performing on. He's a
really?
classically trained bass player. He does a lot of jazz bass and does 1920s, 30s classical jazz. Beautiful voice, beautiful ook. And so I took music lessons with him on Zoom, and actually wonderfully got to meet him in New York, and then fell into playing with an orchestra. And because there was a band I wanted to see, there's a great Japanese ukulele player out of Osaka, Mario Sensei, and he was in a band called Sweet Hawaiians. And I recommend anybody to look on YouTube and watch Sweet Hawaiians. Brilliant band, stand-up bass, guitar, steel guitar, ukulele, mandolin, fantastic. And I always wanted to see that band. And then found out Mario was coming up, and my teacher in the US said, "Oh, Mario Sensei is coming up to Tokyo. You should see him." And I thought, "Oh, this is fantastic. He's teaching a class." And so I signed up for all of his classes, and I didn't pay attention. First class was beginner, second was kind of intermediate, and the third one, the guy came up and said, "You're staying for orchestra." I said, "Yeah." Being a gaijin, not having all the Japanese I needed, I just, yeah, just sat down, and so they gave me some music, and I got to join this orchestra. And the name of the orchestra is the Sweet Strings Ukulele Orchestra. It was made.
Perfect.
It was made for me. They're celebrating 10 years. They got orchestras in Tokyo, Nagoya, and Osaka. And now I play mandolin as well with the orchestra, so doing mandolin and ukulele. Yeah, it's brilliant. Sorry, it's a kind of long tangent, but loving it.
No, that's amazing. It makes me want to go get out there and practice a bit more because
Yeah,
we
we should
we
jam together.
I'm down. The styles might be quite different because I'm a little bit more freestyle,
That's all right. Any
but
freestyle's brilliant.
we can try, yeah. Because in Hawaii, growing up, it's kind of like the recorder, like you said with the Canadian school system. They teach you the ukulele as a kid instead of the recorder as they do in Japan, and then pretty much everyone has one lying around.
Mm,
And but I don't think I can't read music with it these days. I wouldn't even know what to do. But we could definitely sit around and jam a little bit. Maybe on the next podcast we can do
fantastic.
a
Well, that's the
virtual
thing with
duet or even in
ukulele.
person.
You get I got a friend of mine who doesn't play ukulele at all. We went first time he picked it up, and I showed him how to do a C and an F. So there's
Classic.
very simple chords. And then I got out my harmonica, which is in C, and then we just started jamming together. So we do C and F, and just jamming.
So much
It's so
fun.
much fun.
So much fun.
Yeah,
Nice.
and
I look
it's
forward to. Yeah, go ahead.
and music's taught me about teamwork, right? It
Mm.
is music because you're playing, but you're also listening, and there's a give and take, and it's yeah, it's just wow. Yeah, sorry, I was
No,
digressing
yeah.
into a philosophical moment there.
No, it's beautiful, and I'd love to talk about your team and I guess the symphony that you have at FocusCore. And you'd also mentioned your podcast as well. Maybe you can speak a little bit about the things that you're doing right now in terms of content or in terms of the team management. What is it like to be there right now?
It's fun. Yeah, so basically, it's really exciting because I we've come into an area where we know we can be the best in the world at being a boutique executive search firm. If anybody's hasn't read Good to Great by Jim Collins, go and read it. That was one of our required readings back in the day. Great companies knew how to pick what could they be the best in the world at? And I think that FocusCore can be the best in the world at being a boutique back office executive recruitment company in Japan. And there's definitely a place for that because you got kind of the Shreks, the big major players, the Spencer Stewart and Egan Zender and Corn Fairies on one side. You got kind of the one man bands that specialize maybe in one little tiny area without the bandwidth. And like the Shreks only they can only they complete only maybe 67% of their searches and then they walk away. And these one man bands don't always have the bandwidth to really help companies. And so it's exciting for us that we can go in and, for CFO searches or heads of HR searches or heads of supply chain or and country managers, I'd put us second to none in Tokyo, and I think that's exciting. I think everybody in the team feels that it's interesting because, we used to have really strong kind of silos where people were working in back office or they're working, finance and accounting, or they're working in different silos. Whereas we come together on project, and so it's no one person goes into a search. So I'll get a country manager search, and I might be working with a client, and I'll bring in a senior consultant, and then I'll bring in a couple of researchers, and we'll have a team of 4 or 5 people working on any one search. And then I might have a CFO search going as well and have kind of different team working on that one. And so we'll come together and then break apart for each project, which is just kind of developed organically for us, which was very cool. And
How,
then around a lot of the marketing stuff that we do, like podcasting, a lot of that's just really put together to really want to help companies, global leaders that are trying to understand Japan, because it seems to be a black box for a lot of, APAC in Singapore, or someone sitting in New York or in London, and they're trying to go, okay, we need to hire this country manager. We just finished up a country manager search for an Italian company in Japan, and they just didn't have a clue on how to search in Japan. And we're able to help guide them to do that. And that's so much fun. And so being able to put a podcast together where I talk to leaders in Japan market and ask their opinions on how to do this, because, we're not going to service everybody and we want companies to do well. How can we help them?
it's a wonderful strategy. How has it been working? How long have you been doing the podcast, and have you noticed the results coming in?
So I'm trying to think when someone asked me and I don't remember. We've got 54, I think 54 episodes. So about 3 years, I guess, going on 3 years. And for me personally, it's been really rewarding that I get to learn from people. I mean, you're doing a podcast and you get to do some research and figure out good questions to ask, and you learn about people, and then you sit down and have an awesome chat with them. And that's always exciting. I think just to learn myself what people are doing. That's probably the biggest thing, is just my personal takeaway. I feel guilty that you know, it's a, it's a great thing. I get to help people and learn it from.
Sounds like you love learning in general. I mean, you're constantly consuming like books and now getting to talk to these leaders as well.
That's why
Brilliant.
recruitment, I mean, part of your podcast is, why to get into recruitment. And part of it's learning. It's just sitting down. I train new recruiters, and they're after a couple of months, they're like, well, I don't know, like especially brand new contingency recruiters, like, I don't know accounting. I don't feel comfortable. I'm like, so you're meeting 10 professionals per week. You're meeting 40 finance people per month from different companies. So you've done that for 2 months, 3 months. You've met over 100 people. You know about the market and you know about recruitment processes. So have that confidence, because oftentimes the CFO or the country managers in their kind of little ivory tower, and they don't know the market, and they trust and should trust a recruitment partner that knows the market, because they just have so much information that they can share. You meet so many people, and they oftentimes know more about their company than maybe that person is looking to hire on the other end, right?
Mm.
So I think that's just the big point for me.
Yeah, there's always that. it always seemed a bit vague. What is market information exactly? But it's really just speaking with people, I guess, and understanding what their needs are, what their motivations are, what their experience is, I
Mm.
guess, as well.
And you do get
Um,
to learn. You learn a lot. I remember
mm,
when I was a newbie, I went to ABN AMRO, which is a Dutch bank, and Bob Lyons, never forget him. He was the CEO or COO, C-suite. And he's spending 30 minutes with this young recruiter who obviously knew nothing about banking. And he said to me point blank, "Do you know what we do?" And I said, "No." And I'm so happy I said no. And I was really honest with him and transparent. And he spent 30 minutes drawing diagrams on how the financial industry works, what their company, how it's organized. And I always took that away. And people will share and teach you, and it's wonderful, wonderful way of doing things. And like I said, it's fun. So after
mm.
26, 27 years of doing this, I'm still meeting people that are doing some exceptional things in this market.
So it sounds like, I mean, if you had some advice for young recruiters, basically learn as much as you can. That means meeting people, asking questions, and being honest that you don't know.
Yeah, I had yeah, you asked me the question. I wrote down two tips
Yeah.
for young recruiters. The first one was persistent consistency, which
Mm,
is knowing your ratios. Like, you don't need a company to tell you your KPIs. You should be there working to get commission most in Western companies. So know how to make a placement and what your numbers are, and then go and hit your numbers over and over and over again. It's like marathon running, right? It's You gotta do the same thing. And I see new recruiters, they'll do all this, they get started and they do all this new activity, and then they're worried about closing deals, and then they stop doing that activity. And so they have this long valley where they try to figure out what they were doing. So I think persistent consistency is a huge one. And then, yeah, my second was keep learning, because you'll be obsolete so fast. And it's simple stuff, right? I recommend. I wrote a couple books about, and I think for salespeople or recruiters, they should always read every quarter a book on time management,
mm,
sales, motivation, because in sales and recruitment, you're getting shot down a lot, so you've got to have a positive headspace, and then something in their specific area. So if you're doing supply chain, you should be reading about supply chain. If you're doing, financial services, reading about that. And then simple stuff that I can't believe a lot of people don't spend the time with is learning about their CRM system, learning about how their email program works or how AI works, or just spend the time, watch the tutorials, do the YouTube videos, because that will save you time, because your competitors will do that and they will beat you. Um, my favorite running quote, forgot the guy's name. I'll send it to you later. You can put it in the show notes. But somewhere, somewhere in the world, someone is training when you are not. And when you run against that person, they will beat you. And I love that. I think same with recruitment, right? If you're a newbie and you're getting started, yeah, learning and persistent consistency.
yeah, it's like running like you have a target on your back, I guess, in some ways, but not letting that pressure overwhelm you too.
Yeah, there's got to be and yeah, you gotta somehow get that gravitas, and that's the nice thing. I mean, we've changed our model to retained, and it's nice that we're older recruiters. There's a lot of good young recruiters in the market and good communicators, and big companies like an Amazon or Microsoft need those kind of resume pushers. It's important. But they're not good consultants
Hmm.
on the whole. They just don't have the life experience, right? I mean, I've raised kids, and I know what it you know takes to get a first job. When I'm talking to someone who's in their 30s or 40s, I know kind of where they're at in their life and what's important to them. If I'm talking to a hiring manager, CEO, I've run a company, so I know what's important to them, and where they're thinking about that P&L or how they're trying to build out their team and be successful. And so I can empathize, and I think that's and empathize and advise. And I think those
Mm.
are important things. And there are some really good recruiters in Tokyo that that can do that in different specialities. And so I encourage listeners who are wanting to be recruiters to seek those people out, and companies that are looking to hire to seek out those recruiters.
Mm. So you don't see yourself really hiring any kind of newbie recruiters at this stage. It's going to be if you were to hire more mid-career.
Yeah, definitely. So looking at people, sometimes I'll look at recruiters with experience. That's nice. I prefer professionals who
Mm.
who know the industry. So more recently, we've hired more professionals that have work life experience, and they're bringing that to their consulting. So they know how to go in and work a project. And so, okay, it's recruitment, but it's still running a project, and they can bring that to the table.
Mm.
Teaching the recruitment part's easy, but
Hmm.
having that kind of knowledge of business or of finance, or it goes a long ways.
Interesting. I mean, there's tons of unique things that it sounds like you're doing, not just with the hiring and also marketing and this retained search as well. So it's very interesting to see the success that you've built
Mm,
professionally and personally.
thank you.
Um, yeah. Is there anything else, I guess, that you wanted to share?
It's been fun. I think I
Yeah.
overshared. It's been fun to be on the other side of the microphone, and
I mean, you are a great podcast guest. I can tell you've worked on this and polished it as well. So thank
thank
you.
you. It's fun. I love it. I think you got a great idea of, really helping recruiters, how to look for a job and fall into recruitment, because there's a
Hmm.
lot of needs, and I think there's a lot of good firms, and there's places for everyone, and I think it's good for, newbies that are really coming into this industry, whether it's young people who've graduated or people that have come off like an English teaching program and are following in. There's some great companies that do good education, and they will do handhold training. Yeah, that's a good place, starter place. And then there's places for older professionals, seasoned professionals who are burnt out, people that might have come over with a spouse, uh,
Hmm.
working moms that want to go back into the workplace and want that flexibility. Gosh, recruitment is an awesome, awesome calling, and I feel so lucky that I've fallen into this, and that's been a great calling in my life, and for me and my family and the people around me, and I think it's good for society. So I
Hmm.
really, really appreciate that opportunity, and I think it's a great place for people to jump into as a career.
Beautifully put. Yeah, I think it's all about just showcasing people that have made it. And so people can see, I want to be like David. Like I want to do this. Oh, this is you can run 7 marathons in 7 days. These are new things that are amazing that you're kind of pioneering here. And yeah, I'm excited to raise this kind of new generation with this information and inspiration to see where we can take the industry in a couple of years. So
Well, maybe we'll get a group of people and we'll run to Kyoto.
run to Kyoto. I think that'd be awesome.
Wouldn't that be fun? My, especially like maybe
Depends
the
on your
honey
definition,
season. Yeah, right? Just go and see
but
the,
fall time maybe
could do fall. Great
or
weather
spring.
now. So that's why I ran up to Fukushima, was in November. Could see the leaves all the way going up.
Oh, nice.
I do have a dream to run from Kyushu to Hokkaido, but and I need to get figure out how to get some time off to do that.
There was someone who did this, I believe. Maybe you read their
There are some
book.
people that have done it. I know there's bikers. I know Lowell Shepherd's ridden from he's ridden the whole length of Japan. So yeah, people have done it at least on bike, and I think just recently there was a guy saw on Instagram that was running through Japan as well. So
Hmm. We'll look forward to that content coming from you, I guess, soon,
these
or some
podcasts on the
ukulele
road.
duets.
Oh, it gets weird after 4 or 5 days. Like your mind gets a bit wonky, but yeah.
I'm sure. Nice. Well, thank you so much
Thanks.
for your time. It was a pleasure. And people will know where to find you as well. As is LinkedIn the best place to connect? Or
Sure. It's great.
okay, excellent. All right. Thank you.